The next story comes from Cybersecurity Dive, and the title here is Crowdstrike avoids customer exodus after triggering global IT outage.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so they are.
Some of us predicted doom and gloom, right? Sorry,
yeah. This story indicates that they've incurred about $34 million in expenses related to the incident back on July 19th. But their CEO, and I think this was on a recent earnings call, indicated that they had only lost, as of the closing of the prior quarter, 3%. So they lost 3% of their renewals, which I don't know, like, on any given quarter, some percentage of your customers aren't going to renew. I don't know if that's net of the the expected rate. But so two thoughts. One is, what's interesting that, kind of like on many other fronts, like we see when companies get hacked, there's not a lot anymore, at least. There's not a lot of negative attribution to them, right? The goodwill doesn't seem to, the goodwill of an organization doesn't seem to be tied to whether or not they have a security incident anymore. Value judgment on that. It's just an observation that when companies get hacked or have some kind of an outage or what have you, it doesn't seem to move the stock price. And in this case, it hasn't appeared to cause a customer exodus. But my second thought is that, I worked at an organization that had used Crowdstrike, and we were looking at moving off of them. This was well before the issue here. The time to do that is very long. It is not a 1 quarter thing. And so
I have similar things in my notes. Yeah, go on.
I don't think it's fair to make an assessment at this point in time based on, what happened in their recent earnings and their, their customer retention as an indicator of whether or not they're going to see mass defections. Because let's be honest, that's like probably for the average company an 18-month or 2-year process.
Yep. And you've got to look at a couple things here. I completely agree. What is their renewal cycle? Typically, at a minimum, customers on a 1-year cycle. So you got to look at how many came up in that quarter. To your point, how many had time to make a change that made sense to them. They also talk about that they're offering customer commitment packages, which are basically discounts to keep people on board. So who knows, right? I agree with you. Like a year from now, I think would be a much safer bet to tell the tale of that's probably enough time to see if I wanted to move, do I do it wisely? I don't want to knee jerk to a different platform, especially if I'm a shop of any size. These are non-trivial, very sticky pieces of software that are built into a lot of processes. It's not simple to just rip and replace. So I completely agree with your point. It's interesting, and I think it's worth following. But I also think that the other thing I would say is that unlike a security incident where you've got an external party negatively impacting you through willful conduct that is negative towards you, right? That's hostile towards you. This is a little different. This was a mistake made by Crowdstrike that caused a big outage. This wasn't like a Fozzie Bear APT 767 out of Uzbekistan coming after you. This was an oops, a very big oops by the company. So it's tough for me to correlate the two in terms of, I don't know that their goodwill is going to bounce back like if they were hacked, in my opinion.
For me personally, I don't know what to expect. This, like, we're living in such weird times right now. I have no idea what to expect, other than, we'll check in a year and see what it looks like.
Yeah. But it's interesting to follow just from a academic and armchair quarterback perspective.
Yeah. I wanted to bring it up because I saw some chest beating from Crowdstrike, and I thought it was important to give that context that, and I'm sure they know it, right? But we don't know what the ground truth is. We don't know if they're going to lose 10% of their customers, or maybe they've already lost all the customers they're going to lose. We just don't know. But it is interesting that they're coming strong out of the gate saying effectively nobody's left. And I'm not sure, I don't, my inclination is not to buy that.
Well, I don't think they're lying. I think it's just too soon to know.
Yeah, it's fair.
I think you're right that these things take a long time, and there's probably a calculus being made of, is it better to continue to run CrowdStrike until they can do a random customer could do a planned intentional migration versus knee-jerk migration or just turning it off. I mean, that's the other thing. It's possible people could just disable it and turn it off and put it in the corner and make it shelfware. And they've already agreed to pay out their contract, so they've got to wait till their contract expires. I don't know. That's why I think a year from now, or even if they've got multi-year deals, 2 and 3 years from now, it'll be very telling. But by then, hey, we have such short attention spans. I think the reality is this is a discounting conversation probably for a lot of these customers.
It's a good point. I think the other reality too is that this space is so tumultuous and fast moving that it's hard to say if CrowdStrike, let's just hypothesize that CrowdStrike did lose a bunch of customers. Was that because of this, or was it because some other company has some better pricing, better capabilities? Like, it's really hard. It's going to be hard to make a definitive attribution. But anyway, the other interesting number was the $34 million. Like, that was probably bar none the single largest IT disaster this planet has ever seen. And it's only cost them like $34 million. That's
so far.
I know there are some pending lawsuits, which I'm not expecting a lot out of, but I guess we'll see.
No, but there'll be ongoing legal expense.
True. It is true.